2 rounds into the A-League men's season, and there's one team remaining with a perfect 100% win record. Not only that, but a 100% competitive fixtures in club history win record. Whilst that stat may come across as slightly hyperbolic, defeating Ufuk Sydney FC is a feat that shouldn't be disregarded this season, and Auckland have managed to do it at the first time of asking. A controversial finish, yes, but one that instantly writes itself into the barely written first chapter of Black Knight's history. From there, the Derby, a self-described horrendous performance from Aurelio Vidmar's City against Kisnorbo's victory, where party lines, in all honesty, didn't seem to play too much of a factor. The Jets pull out an all-timer against the Bulls to claim their first win of the season. Adelaide kick off their campaign, and Juan Mata gets his first start on this episode of Round Ball Australia. My name is Lachlan, Avil, and joining me today is Jacob Stevens. Jacob, should we be calling ourselves Round Ball New Zealand because it's 2 Kiwi teams that sit atop of the A-League tree at the moment?
Well, maybe we should be, but let's just switch it, and when Australian teams are back on the table, we'll be Round Ball Australia again. I mean, I guess if it's giving us a bunch of people listening in, then why not, hey?
Absolutely. Christian Montegan, hello to you. As far as I can tell, Wellington are sitting above Victory by the 8th tie differential, which is fair play, discipline. So obviously the red card to Roderick Miranda. But it gives us this lovely 1v2 in the lead up to the New Zealand Derby this weekend.
Yeah, it does. Obviously, it's a great narrative. I reckon we should call this podcast Round Ball Oz/NZ. How about a bit of both? Incorporate that. But incorporate it all into it. Why not? But no, really looking forward to that one. It should be, a classic, hopefully.
All right. Well, we are going to start in Auckland. It was a really tight affair. Went down to the wire. Plenty of controversy in it, of course. Jacob, what did you make of this game as a whole?
To be honest, it was really entertaining in the first half. I thought end-to-end football, quite open game, and it was these two sides who, Sydney, of course, we were sort of expecting them to play really well. Auckland, they had a good game out against Brisbane, but it's Brisbane, and coming up against a really strong Sydney side, I don't think there were many people who really knew what to expect from the side, but they came out and they played some really fantastic football, and the two teams just back and forth and plenty of chaos, and honestly, that first half, I remember at half time thinking to myself, I was like, there's still another 45 minutes of this game to go. Like, I know obviously that no goals had been scored up to that point, and obviously the goal wasn't scored until, what was it, like the 6th or 7th minute of stoppage time. Yeah. So I came very, very late, but I think throughout there was definitely the looming threat from both sides that either of them could go and put the ball in the back of the net. Obviously there was a penalty shout that was waved away early in the second half. Then, as it goes on, Sydney think they've got the late goal that wins it. That gets chalked off for offside. It's just, it was a crazy, all-encompassing game of football. And while it finished 1-0, I think it was a much more entertaining watch than the score would suggest.
Absolutely. Christian, shall we do a little bit of round ball VAR? There was 3 big calls there.
Shall we?
Yeah, absolutely, as Jacob referred to. The first one was that penalty shout in around the 58th minute that was waved away. It was described as mutual holding in there. I think it was DeVries and Klamala, was it? And, the players go to ground. What the referee said was supported by VAR. And we found out afterwards, actually, John Moss made a statement that, the angles they have, mutual holding, it was correct. And there wasn't kind of enough contact there to meet this higher threshold for intervention that they're asking for this year, and they've briefed the clubs on at the start of the season. So there is obviously contact, and it's probably one that then again doesn't get overturned if it is given, but because it's not given, we're sticking with the referee's decision.
Well, this is one of the problems I've got with VAR, right? Because if it's not that clear and obvious, surely you're getting the referee down to the monitor to actually have a second look at it, because from my point of view, you can easily argue that that's a penalty, right? So, I mean, the people in the VAR room can have their own opinion, but at the end of the day, they're not the ones refereeing the game. It's the referee on the pitch who's actually has to make that final call. So, obviously the ref sometimes isn't in the best angle or best position to view a certain incident. And okay, you can say fair enough, but that's why we've got this technology in place to actually get him over to the monitor and actually have a look at it and make a judgment for himself. So that's where the frustration part comes into it, because I don't think Klamala really held on to it the defender as much as what he was getting hold on to. He was getting tugged basically to the ground. I thought it was a penalty from first sight. So at least give the referee a chance to have a look at it again. And then from there, if the ref thinks that it's inconclusive evidence that it can be overturned, then fair enough. But at least he's got, another eye on it, because, otherwise, what's the point of having the technology in the first place?
I mean, the counter argument is right that you don't want to waste time on all these frivolous things.
But you want to get the decision right, though.
Yeah, but there's a balance. It's not get it right above all else, and that's why there's a higher threshold, because you don't want people going over to the screen all the time and killing the atmosphere out of games. So for me, this one sits in the category where it's just the referee's call. It's tight. I'm okay, because if VAR did say go have a look at it, then you're just re-refereeing the game. It's nothing like we're going to talk about Aziz Behich later. It's nothing that the referee has missed and not seen. So I think Sydney maybe can count themselves a little bit unlucky, but I don't think it's something that VAR should have got involved with. The goal in the 83rd minute for Sydney, that's an offside one. That's kind of as clear as it comes. But then you get to the Auckland goal, Jacob. Did it hit the hand of the player before it went in? That there was probably, again, not enough angles to say it's clear and obvious one way or another. But I think it did hit his hand. I think no goal there.
Broadcast angle, you can't see a thing. The angle from inside the net, from the top corner, and you see it come in, I cannot say from that angle that it definitively hit the hand or arm. It looks to me like some part of upper body / face and then onto thigh. There's just not enough there for me to say it definitively hit the arm. And I think that's probably where VAR, they stood, was they couldn't say. It's, again, we're raising this threshold of when to make a call for VAR. And if it's not as clear cut, as some decisions in the past have been, if it's like this one where, the angles, it can be so, what's the word I'm looking for here? Just difficult to make these calls when you don't have a ton of angles, right? When you've only got 2 or 3 of them, you've got 2 that are blocked off by the view's blocked off by other players on the pitch. You've got the one from inside the goal, which is probably the most clear, but you don't get the best, depth perception on that one, right? Because it's just one angle. I can't say for sure it hit the hand. I can understand why Sydney fans would be aggrieved by it, because if that happened against my team, it would be a similar thing. It's definitely a handball. But then, from an Auckland perspective, it's like, you can't say definitively it did hit the hand. I mean, maybe I've just not been looking at the vision close enough, but I can't say for sure 100% that it hit the hand.
But again, though, you can say that all you want, but this is a game-changing moment, a game-changing decision. And just get the ref over to the monitor and have a look. This is my argument I raise again. I just don't see the problem in getting him to, if he takes 5 minutes to see it, I understand, fair enough. You're sucking the life out of the game, but just give him an opportunity to look at it. And if it's not clear and obvious, then go ahead and play on and give the goal. But that's where I get frustrated with it all. Where's the threshold?
But the idea is that the VAR is looking at it and deciding that threshold. If it's not clear and obvious when the VAR is looking at it, then what are you saying that the referee is going to see on field that the VAR?
Well, we see people in the VAR room make mistakes as well, right?
Yeah,
they don't get it.
Sure,
they don't get it right all the
third
time.
and a fourth person.
But this is
time you remember a
okay. I understand.
Admitting they made a mistake.
No, but I understand the point on the first one with Klamala. And that challenge in the 58th minute, whatever it was. I understand Lockie's point there, but when it's a goal and the 97th minute of the game, then isn't that the opportunity where you go and have a look at it? I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I think by the word of the processes, I don't think they could have done everything differently, but I think perhaps,
I think it hits the hand, though.
I think it hits the hand.
I'm with you, Lockie. It hits the hand. Yeah.
I think it hits the hand. And, there were some more extenuating circumstances for Sydney in this game as well, Jacob. They had Douglas Costa out through injury, who they decided not to risk. They had Joe Lolly go out in the 35th minute. But I think more than anything, you think for Sydney, okay, maybe you got a little bit unlucky with some of these decisions. You have no Costa and Lolly out for most of the game, and you still only lost, to that goal away to Auckland, who looked like probably one of the other really good teams in the competition. I know they're coming off a week that is now 2 losses, but I think they can actually feel very good about where they are.
Yeah, and again, it's that case of when you do feel hard done by decisions that have been made that are sort of out of your control, there's no point feeling like you played poorly because you didn't, right? Like, I think Sydney played extremely well. Like I said, for most of the first half, it was very open-ended. They didn't concede. They actually defended really, really well in that first half, all things considered. They crafted their own chances. This is without Costa, for the most part, without Lolly. Those are, your two really big name attacking players. Obviously still had Wahim out there, still had Patrick Klimala out there as well. And I thought Caceres had a very good game too, but it was just a case of, you feel hard done by. And so for that reason, you can't really hold it against yourself as a team. You can't go, oh, we played poorly there. I don't think it'll affect them, their mentality too much, this one. And the same to be said for their loss in Asia as well, right? Like, they played all right in that game and they just didn't quite get that result. So if it continues to happen and it becomes a case of they continually are losing in these tight games late on, with injuries and things like that, that's when it can start to build up. But I think right now, I don't think it will affect them too much. I think Tale will have them, pretty firmly on the same page about that, and they'll still be looking to fire off strongly as the league continues, because it's too early now to be getting in your own head about, we should have won this one, we should have won that one. You just move on from it, right? You played well, you didn't get the result. That's football sometimes.
What does this mean for Auckland, Christian? Like, regardless of, the performance or how they got the win, the reality is they've had, a Sydney late goal chalked off, crowd goes crazy. They've had a late goal, crowd goes crazy. After all the success of last week as well, getting so many people in, it was never going to be the same crowd. But in terms of, building the folklore and the legacy of that football club in its very, very early stages, these games can have such an impact because it's the fans create those memories and they want to come back to experience more of them.
Yeah, exactly right. These types of games can be game changing in terms of, how your season unfolds, right? Because it can give you that boost of confidence, 2 wins on the trot to start as a new franchise in the competition. But at the same time, I think we just got to pump the brakes a bit. They've played both games at home. We've got to see how they travel away from home. All these other aspects that come into play. So yes, they've started off well. It's great as a solid base, a good foundation for them to build on. And like we've kept saying on this podcast, they've got Steve Corica, a really experienced manager there, who will surely keep them level-headed and say, guys, it's only the start of the season. We've still got so long to go. But at the same time, there's so much confidence, surely, to get a win against Sydney, one of the favourites to win the championship. That must be a good feeling for sure.
Are they a top 4 team for you now, Jacob? Because they're definitely getting close for me.
Yeah, they look the real deal, don't they? And we sort of touched on it in the last episode about what they've done really well is their international recruitment and bringing in players who, not just fill holes, but are quality and raise the quality of the players around them as well. I think, they're definitely looking like it at this point in time. I think there are a couple of teams that are still stumbling, still trying to find their way. Obviously, the Mariners haven't started firing off on all cylinders yet. The Victory, they still look very, very good, obviously. Wellington are still, they're second now at this point, but I don't think they've really put in that performance that has shown the sort of dominance that perhaps we would have expected to see from them. So I think it's definitely very open. Oh, and the other team is obviously the Wanderers, right? Who haven't looked very good at all. So it's this, I think Auckland are definitely there or thereabouts, sort of top 4, top 5 for sure. I obviously have them 9th in the predictions because I just
before
didn't
they
know
kicked the
what to
ball.
make. Yeah, exactly. I didn't know what to make of them. I thought let's just put them basically slap bang in the middle almost and see where they go from there. And they've just continued to rise every week. And part of that is going to be the fact that they're a new team and they want to make a good impression to start with these big crowds and things. So it's going to be this upcoming game against Wellington is going to be a huge one for them because they're up against another team that's expected to do really, really well. It's going to be a massive crowd. It's going to be a big deal, and it's going to be their third real test. And I think if they can pass that one, then there is no questioning their, sort of title chances even, as a side, because while Sydney look on paper the best, they bested them, right? So it's not a foregone conclusion. And I think that Auckland, their stocks are definitely rising.
And I think if nothing else, just like how the Wanderers did it in their season 1, I think Auckland have proven that they could do that. Like they are definitely in the mix, and as you say, to beat Sydney is a massive scalp. And then Christian, it sets up this awesome game next week, the New Zealand Derby, the Kiwi Classico, the first time we're going to get a taste of it in Wellington. 1v2 because of red cards. It just the build up is insane. We've had this really nice run, Sydney Derby, Melbourne Derby into the New Zealand Derby. It's going to be a spectacular game. And yes, Wellington haven't really had that test yet as to if they're going to be a really good side or not. But just in terms of the folklore of this matchup, it's going to be insane.
Yeah, in terms of the atmosphere, it's going to be fantastic. Should be a really good spectacle. It's something that I think New Zealand football has been missing for a while now, just to have this rivalry in their own country, to have another team, beside each other, just for that extra bit of flair, that rivalry. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, it's a massive test for Auckland, but fascinatingly, it's their third game in New Zealand. So again, they're not even traveling away. So that's another advantage for them. Obviously, if the Phoenix, having traveled to Perth, have got to make the trip back to Wellington. So if that plays a factor or not will be a case of wait and see. But I'm expecting a really tight contest, but an entertaining one nonetheless.
And while we're here, Jacob, a quick word on Wellington and Perth over the weekend. It kind of feels like both on par for these teams. Perth not really showing too much of an improvement from the drubbing they got last week. And Wellington, a win away from home, especially in the OG distance derby, is always good, but still yet to face that test.
Yeah, like you said, about par. Perth, I'm still extremely disappointed about. I was expecting them to do so much better than they have done. And Perth fans are already in doom and gloom mode all over social media, which, I mean, it's not surprising after the round one performance that they put in. But at least they didn't lose 6-1 this time. So, that's the positive to take from it, I guess, right? Improvements little by little, and against a decent Wellington side. And like I just said as well about Wellington, I don't think they've quite had that game yet where they have dominated out and out and they've looked completely unbeatable. Well, they obviously had a very good game here against Perth, but, it's still a question of, are they going to be able to continue to take these wins away from home on these big games? Because, excuse me, it was something obviously Italiano focused on last season, right? And the way that he set his teams up away from home. And there was perhaps some talk about him changing the way that he was going to do that and go about playing away from home. It doesn't seem like there's been too much of a trend away from that yet. And it's still the same Wellington away from home that we saw last season. But I mean, if it's effective, it's effective, and it's got them the win here. I just was perhaps expecting them to do a little bit more against a Perth team that does seem a bit down and out at the moment.
I think don't sleep on the absences of Paulo Retre and Marco Rojas from what we're hearing out of Chiefy. Again, I've said this before, but apparently those two players are going to be very key to the way they want to play. So perhaps that's part of the conservative nature of his approach as well. But as you say, a win's a win, and it's going to be massive next week. Let's move on to the Melbourne Derby. It was pitched as the biggest game of the round. Of course, it a 30-minute spree at the start of the game blew it wide open for Melbourne Victory, and Melbourne City left reeling.
We weren't even close to the football for the first 20 minutes. Every duel we lost, we weren't competitive, we weren't moving quickly.
Every time that Patrick Beach had the ball, they just went man for man right across the pitch and just said, go on then. If you're going to play short or play long, we're going to win our battle and you're going to have to deal with that.
We missed tackles, we were late to the ball. The duels, the one-on-one duels, were horrendous.
It was a bit of a PK masterclass a little bit. I just think they looked so much more up for it, up for the fight,
The players, followed what we wanted to do, very quickly, and, I was very happy for them to capitalise on doing that, which was great. I thought the boys did really well, especially in the first half.
There's probably no better way than to endear yourself to the Melbourne Victory fans than winning the derby in that fashion.
If you can't get up for a game like this, there's something definitely wrong. Christ, do we need to cop 3 goals before we actually turn up?
Melbourne Victory just too good overall, and you get 3 goals so early, it's game over.
You have to be competitive. You are 1% off your game. It doesn't matter who you play. You don't need any talent for that. No talent. You just need to compete.
So Christian not turning up, just need to be a little bit more competitive. It was something that City lacked in abundance in the first half hour on Saturday night.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can point to Victory performing well in that first 30 minutes, first half, but at the end of the day, you've got to put the blame on City and their sort of poor display coming out of the blocks. They were just non-existent. There was no urgency, no intensity. Probably the worst version of City that I've seen in a derby, for a long time, if ever, because you just don't expect that attitude, coming out from the get-go. You want to see that intensity. Like I said, there was just none of it. It just seems so disjointed. As is Beige on the left, just got completely torn apart to shreds. And Victory, to their credit, capitalised on it. Nishan Volupele getting that early goal. Asked Kisnorbo after the match his thoughts on Volupele so far this season. He said, he's been impressed, but he's still got room for improvement. And Volupele has been one of those players who does have the ability, but he's always struggled to finish it off in that, the final product, the final ball. But finally, it seems he's found this newfound confidence in himself in front of goal, which is great to see. Then obviously Virgos getting on the score sheet, and then that absolute blunder from Patrick Beach there. You've got to feel for him being a young keeper. But these mistakes happen, and I guess in modern day football, if you want to try and keep passing it around at the back, especially when you're not particularly playing that well and lacking that confidence, then those mistakes are going to creep in. And unfortunately for Beach, he was the victim of that. But to City's credit, though, in the second half, I thought they were much better. It was a complete U-turn from them. Vidmar must have really torn into him at halftime with the speech he gave, because he had to. They needed a massive response, and at the same time was probably a bit of Victory laying down the tools a bit, which is understandable. You see that from teams all the time with the big lead like that. You fully expect that. So, for City, getting that goal back obviously wasn't enough, but all in all, I thought it was an entertaining derby all around.
I think in the second half, there was a couple of personnel changes that really made a lot of influence. They took off Ferreira, the new centre back. He got bodied by Nikos Virgos and I think it was Volupele at times as well. Really outmatched physically and really, I said he had a bit of a tough time. So instead they brought on one of their youngsters into midfield. Kai Truran drops back. And then Atkinson as well shifted out to right back when they brought Callum Talbot up, who was getting rinsed by Reno Piscopo as well for most of the game. So they have still a little bit of work to do, Jacob, in terms of figuring out their best 11 as well. I hazard a guess that when Matt Leckie becomes fit and slots into the role that Atkinson is being asked to play, that probably means that Talbot's time at right back, at least in the starting team, is probably done, and Atkinson would take that back. He looked a lot more effective out wide. And then, of course, you still have Jimmy Jago to come back from suspension as well. So there are some issues there in terms of personnel, but they were really outplayed by an extremely dominant Melbourne Victory side who, as everyone's been saying, just, out-muscled. They wanted it more energy. Won all their duels early in the game. That's where both of the first two goals came from. A little bit of tactical exploitation, I think, in terms of the way that City set up at the back, but it was all based around one-on-one duels and, man marking, going one-on-one and just being able to win those individual battles.
Yeah, and then partnering that man marking scheme with just a really intense press from the front line as well, which just didn't give City in the back line any time on the ball whatsoever. And that really didn't help Beach in particular, because he just didn't have the time that he was afforded in round one, where he could sit on the ball a little bit longer to find the pass. He was being forced into making decisions a lot quicker, and that's where that mistake comes in, because he hesitates for a moment. All of a sudden, Teague's upon him, and there was only one way that was going to end, and obviously ended with the ball in the back of the net. So no, it was a really clear indication and a show from Patrick Kisnorbo that he's taking this thing super seriously, which obviously he was going to. He's a professional, right? But I think there was obviously a lot of disdain for him from the Victory fans, and is he a City agent or like this game? Like the way that he knew, right, City are going to want to play out from the back. They want to get their keeper involved. Let's make sure that we're cutting out the options in the middle of the park. We'll leave, a player super deep for them, because they're not going to get the ball all the way over the top. And if they do, we can just, sit back a little bit and sweep up the ball in behind. And we're going to press in, with a lot of intent up front, force them into making mistakes. and they did it perfectly. And they just didn't really let City do anything. And it's something that Vidmar said in that little package you put together, Lockie. You know, he said, we just didn't get near the ball for the first 20 minutes of the game. Because at the moment that they did, there was a victory player on them or two victory players on them, and it was forcing into these mistakes and into these narrow windows for passes that just weren't working. So it was really, really well done from Patrick Kisnorbo to have his team set up that way. And it's not something we've seen from Victory so far, I don't think. I could be mistaken, but from the most part for Victory, the press has been a little bit more muted. It's been there, obviously, but you know, it's not been quite as intent. There's been a little bit less man marking throughout, especially with Tegan Valadon in the midfield. Yeah. That's been mostly zonal throughout, but here they went man for man and absolutely dominated. So, you know, it's a testament to Patrick Kisnorbo and his ability as a coach, but also a testament to the versatility of the players that Victory have to be able to go from, you know, sitting in sort of a mid block with a light press to being able to press high, go man for man, win your one-on-one duels. That's huge, and it's a massive boost of confidence for the Victory because you know, I don't think that they'd quite found their footing this season. Obviously, in the Australia Cup, a lot of close games, and they did struggle a little bit against A-League opposition. So to be able to come out here and absolutely dominate your rivals, that's a huge marker for the season, and I think that they'll be able to carry on from this. You know, obviously, Virgos getting on a score sheet is huge. Again, Valadon and Teague looked fantastic in the middle of the park. So just on paper, man for man, everything about Victory was stronger, and it was a very dominant performance in that first half. And yeah, if Victory can continue that for the rest of the season, obviously it's a big ask to say, can you do that for the rest of the season, boys? But it's what Kisnorbo will be demanding now, because now that's what the standard they've set for themselves, right? Yeah. They know they can play at this level, so there's no reason not to from here on out. And that's a scary thought for most other sides in the league.
They got a big game next weekend, Christian against MacArthur at Amy Park, the same fixture in terms of the Australia Cup final just a few weeks ago. But they have a few selection questions for the better reasons. Obviously, Daniel Arzani came back from suspension, didn't go straight into the starting lineup. Piscopo had an outstanding game, I thought, despite still being on the end of a few verbals from Patrick Kisnorbo on the sideline. He obviously wasn't happy with something. But then you've got the striker situation. Virgos played very well in this game. Young Josh Rawlins, who came in for the suspended captain, Roderick Miranda. There was a couple of questions on the right side of the spectrum for Kisnorbo heading into this next week's game.
Yeah, the only change I see Kisnorbo making is Miranda making the way for Rawlins. But in terms of Virgos and Piscopo, I thought they've earned their spot for this game against MacArthur, because post-match Kisnorbo said with Arzani, you know, nothing's given. Just because he's come back from suspension and he's available doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to slot straight back into the starting 11. You know, he's got to earn it, and not just him. It's every player in the squad. So yeah, I thought Virgos did really well in terms of his work rate, the pressing, as Jacob mentioned. Even the midfield pair of, you know, Jordy Veldon and Ryan Teague, I thought their pressing as well just absolutely suffocated the life out of City. And I've just been really impressed with that midfield duo, because Kisnorbo said it's a healthy mix in midfield. And I think for me, with that combination of Teague and Veldon, I'm just a massive fan of how well they combine and understand each other's roles, where their communication seems so seamless in terms of who pushes forward, who drops back. And I think they complement each other extremely well. And you know, while you can argue that Leo Senna is the best midfielder in the league, I'm still standing by my claim that Victory has the best midfield partnership in the competition at the moment. Probably a big shout, but yeah, I've been really impressed by them. And if they can keep this pressing game, then yeah, they can be a real threat going forward for sure.
Yeah, Danny McBreen called them the new Nisbet and Ballard earlier today on the A-League Off Air. It's not a bad name to go by. One other thing out of this game, Jacob, Aziz Bayic has been cited by the match review panel over his stamp on Nicolas Virgos, I think it was.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good things that happened with VAR last week, but we seem to be bringing a few things up this week. I'm not going to claim to know whether it was intentional for Aziz or not, but he definitely seems in trouble. He's been given 24 hours for a show cause notice to try and justify why a suspension shouldn't be given to him.
Yeah, and this is why this whole thing of intent, right? This is why if you actually look at the laws of the game, nowhere, anywhere in there does it say that the referee has to judge the intent of the player, because how do you know what a player is thinking at any given moment, right? You judge it on, you know, the force that was used, you know, where on the body it happened, you know, time to react, that sort of stuff. I think it looks pretty clear cut here that, you know, you can't just stamp down after you've just gotten up off of the top of somebody, right? You know that they are below you. You can't say that, oh, he did it deliberately, but he knew that the player was there and still went with, you know, a decent amount of force to stamp down onto the ground. So it looks pretty clear cut to me. Why VAR didn't intervene, I'm not quite sure. Perhaps it was this case of we can't judge intent. You know, we can't say for sure that he knew what he was doing, and he knew that it was going to, you know, be, you know, this sort of what would be violent conduct, wouldn't it? Not even serious foul play. It would have been violent conduct. Like, you know, we can't say for sure that he intended to do it, so we're not going to intervene here. But that does sort of leave it in this tricky space now, where it's up to the match review panel. And it's obviously going to be a lengthy, drawn-out process, I'm sure, because these sorts of things always are. And, you know, I bet such good money that we know the outcome of it mere minutes before Victory's next match. That would be classic. But no, I mean, at least from what I could see, it looked like a pretty clear-cut red card. And yeah, just a bit of a shame that VAR seemed to slip up on that one. And like I said, the only thing I can think is that it comes down to that case of intent, and they just are too scared to sort of make a call on that, because how do you know for sure that that's what the player was thinking?
Honestly, I hope not. I hope it was just plainly missed, because I'm sure the irony is not lost on Melbourne Victory supporters in terms of Zinedine Mashash's red card in the elimination final last season, given by Alex King at a derby at Amy Park. So we'll have to wait and see what the result of that one is. Christian, a few good wingers performed quite well for Victory in this one, but over in Newcastle, there was a former Victory winger in Eli Adams, scored a 5-minute brace to complete a come-from-behind victory for the Newcastle Jets over the Cup winners, the Bulls. And of course, Ryan Scott as well, who I've just realised his green jersey is playing a little bit of tricks with our lower thirds down on the bottom of the screen there, so I'll have to fix that up later. But penalty save for him as well. What a crazy game, and a win for the Jets.
Yeah, it looks like he just cut Scott's head out there and just planted it in there.
No green jerseys in the...
No, but even last season, I said Scott, he deserves a move, to a different club or a bigger club or even overseas, because I thought last season he was tremendous for the Jets. One of the reasons why, they performed better than what they had done, despite having a poor season. That penalty save at the end just shows his leadership, the quality that he has, and he just leads from the back, doesn't he? Just very impressive. The saves he made, just top notch. And then obviously Eli Adams, former Victory man, watching a lot of him last season, he has the talent, but a bit like Valupale, where he just struggles to, string it together sometimes. But, when he pulls it off like he did against MacArthur, this is why everyone says, he's a very talented winger, and he showed. I mean, that first goal when he cuts inside with a little nutmeg, I mean, that was just absolute class. And the finish as well for both goals just showed his composure and, that he's ready for this stage. And that's a player which the Jets desperately crave, because they don't really have many of those types of players that can open up a game and you just create that individual bit of brilliance. So the fact that Adams has that brace under his belt, hopefully it gives him a bit of confidence now going forward that, okay, I belong in this league. I'm capable of, even going better. So, happy for him. He's a young lad, still room for improvement, but yeah, the display he showed against MacArthur, a MacArthur side coming off a 6-1 win, we expected nothing less than 3 points from them at home in Campbelltown. So it just goes to show, doesn't it, that anyone can be anyone on any given day. It's not just a saying that we throw out there. It really is true. Yeah. The Jets proved that on Friday night.
Yeah, anyone can beat anyone. You're absolutely right. I feel this win for Newcastle will mean a lot more for them, Jacob, than the loss will hurt MacArthur. Because I still think on the balance of play, you play that game over and over again, probably 8 or 9 times out of 10, MacArthur do get the win, but it just wasn't that. It was the 1 out of 10 tonight when Newcastle get it. So, in terms of Newcastle, you're teetering on the line of being an 0-2 team, coming off quite a poor season last year. No one's expecting you to do a whole lot this year. But all of a sudden, you've got this win. You have this victory away from home in such dramatic circumstances. That can define your mood in training for like a month, in terms of your optimism and your energy and your effort. Whereas MacArthur, they're very level-headed with their leadership in terms of Mile Stojovski. I don't think it will, mess them around too much. I think they know that they were probably the better team on the night. But for Newcastle, this gives them a new life. It's unfortunate that they now go into the bye and they can't put that in action. But I think that's going to be really helpful for them for the next month or so of football.
Honestly, the two of them, the Jets and MacArthur, watching that game, they were very similar and just similar sort of teams. With you've got a really strong goalkeeper in either goal, right, with Curto and Scott. You've got a sort of reliance on wing play. For MacArthur, it was on Jed Drew, right? They tried to bring the Jets as narrow as possible by playing in the midfield, getting it out to Jed Drew, who would whip across into Jakalish. Obviously, it resulted in a goal. There was a chance a couple of minutes before the goal as well, where he just missed it, couldn't quite get his foot onto it. So, that seems to be the style of play that MacArthur are going for. And the Jets with Eli Adams looks quite similar, except they're getting the ball to Adams and he's just driving directly at goal rather than putting a ball in. So it's sort of these two quite similar sides in a way. It just seems to be that MacArthur perhaps have that little bit more experience, and they've got a couple of players who are a bit more embedded in the side and in the league. And, you've got Eli Adams for the Jets who, Popovich loved him at Victory. I think he said that he's the best finisher at the Victory last season, but didn't really get the chance and couldn't win over the fans there. Comes to the Jets and shows exactly what he can do, right? And why Popovich praised him so much. It's, then people were questioning when the lineup came out, well, why is it Eli Adams that's starting? Why is it not Clayton Taylor, right? And surely there's a space for Taylor in this team. And Adams has just gone and almost put that argument to bed and gone, well, this is why I was in the starting 11. This is why I'm in the team. And then you've also got to remember that they've got Lockie Rose out as well, the Jets at the moment, who's another player who'd be looking to get into the side. So there's going to be a lot of competition for spots. And I think that's going to be huge for the Jets, because while Adams is going to be riding a high, those players behind him, Taylor and Rose, are going to be working even harder to, in Rose's case, get back onto the pitch, but for Taylor to get back into that starting 11, because they want to play football. They're there at the Jets to play football. They're not there to just collect a paycheck and just get on with their lives, right? And Adams has made that more difficult for them, because now they have to really, really perform to get there. And so, yeah, I do think that this is a game where, because one player played so well, but the team won as well, it's going to fire up everybody in that squad, because now there's competition for places, and that's huge. Whereas, like you said, with MacArthur, I don't think it will change much. The one issue I do have is that they do seem very one-dimensional in attack. It is a lot of get the ball to Germain in the midfield, and then he'll get it out to Jed Drew, who'll put a ball into Jakalish. Like, they need to work on a little bit of variability in that, but it's really effective. Obviously, when you've got somebody who's finishing like Jakalish is, that's great. When you've got Jed Drew who can deliver a ball like he can, that's fantastic. When you've got Germain in the middle who can ping a pass like he can, obviously that's great. But yeah, it does seem a little bit one-dimensional for them at the moment. So perhaps that's something they're going to work on. But like you said, they're well coached and they're well drilled, so I don't see this affecting them too badly.
All right, well, Jago, I'm going to come back to you because we got our first taste of Adelaide United in the A-League men's competition this year. 1-1 draw with the Central Coast Mariners. Obviously, they were coming off the back of a midweek fixture in the Asian Champions League Elite. Another loss for them, unfortunately. But it did seem like having to play those run of fixtures, impacted them a little bit. And a tight game on the balance of play.
It was a tale of two halves, really. Adelaide came out the gates firing, had a whole heap of attacking intent, which is obviously something that Colviet has said, ad nauseum over the years, is we want to play attacking football. And, the team really finally started to show the signs of that. They had a really good press up front when, Iubi and Mork in particular were creating these 2v1s against Storm Brew on that right-hand side, the fullback, and really just controlling the half space and the wide areas as well. It was creating a lot of trouble. I think the one thing that Adelaide did lack was that final pass, that incisiveness in the attacking third. And it's something that Colviet spoke about. That's going to come with time, because Mork and Iubi are still learning how to play with one another, right? Iubi didn't get a whole bunch of minutes last season. Mork's relatively new to the team, came in what was it, December, January last season. So, he's while he's been in Adelaide for a long time, right, and he's an Adelaide boy, he's new to the team again, and he's coming back into a different system than when he left. So, it's going to take time to continue to build those relationships, but there were good signs there. I think the issue was just coming out of the gates in that second half. The Mariners made a really good adjustment. They spotted, right, Mork and Iubi are creating this 2v1 every time. It's an overload there. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to a back five. We're going to bring Mikael Docker back slightly. We're going to create this back five, and all of a sudden it just stops that 2v1 from happening because you've got that extra body there. And that really stunted Adelaide, and they just did not have an answer. Didn't really try to change things up too much in possession. The thing that did help Adelaide was a bit of an injection of fresh legs. Ben Falami came on, and he got a couple of touches, couldn't quite get anything going, but Ryan White came on as well. Archie Goodwin came on too, and it brought a bit of energy back into the side, and they started to push back in the back end of the game to try and find that winning goal to get the second to put them past the Mariners. But yeah, it seemed like the Mariners knew what they needed to change in the second half to get back in the game, and they did exactly that. And then it was, a ball in behind. They targeted Isaias because they knew that he wasn't going to be as strong in the air as Ryan Edmondson, and that happened to be the case for the goal as well. Edmondson easily just wins the aerial duel, gets inside of Isaias, and then it's a good save from Delianov, but it's something that he's going to look back on and cringe because he's parried it straight into a massive bodies. He's had so much space to knock that anywhere else, and he knocks it straight into the oncoming players. And if he knocks that off to the left, they're probably not scoring at the Mariners, and Adelaide might hold on for the 1-0 win, but he parries it back into the massive players. It falls, and Sabit Noor is there to put it in the back of the net. And I wrote in the post-match sort of reaction piece I did for the Ramble Australia website, I wrote that it's the easiest and first goal of his A-League career because it was pretty much a tap in from that range. And it's a good goal and a good reward for him because he's been outstanding at the NPL level, and he's getting his chance now with the senior setup with the Mariners, and to get a goal like that, that's a great way to keep your confidence going. But the Adelaide goal was a pretty similar affair as well. Scrap in the box. Jovanovic takes a couple of swings at the ball, finally connects, takes a deflection, goes in the back of the net. So it was sloppy goals, but I think the actual play, it was a really good tactical battle because Adelaide had the upper hand in that first half, really good press, kept the pressure on the Mariners, and they were creating those 2v1 overloads. And in the second half, Mark Jackson shows why he's such a good coach, because he makes that adjustment, and it's an adjustment that Adelaide can't readjust to, and it keeps the Mariners in the game. They get that draw. Obviously, I think both sides would be a little bit disappointed that they didn't come away with more. The Mariners would be disappointed that they didn't come out the gates as quickly as they could have, and Adelaide will be disappointed that they didn't score a second in that first half and put the game to bed then. But it's neither here nor there. A draw was definitely a fair result at the end of the day.
Do you think perhaps, Christian, this match is a little bit of evidence as to maybe we are judging the Mariners a little bit harshly, because obviously the bulk of the football that we've seen from them so far has been in a elite competition in the Champions League, whereas they have a match at home next week against Perth Glory, and all of a sudden they're looking pretty weak. They get 3 points there. They're still undefeated in the A-League. They're 5 points from 3 games, and Mark Jackson is feeling pretty good about the fact that maybe every season has its peaks and troughs for a team throughout a year. Then if this is the low point for the Mariners, 5 points from 3 games still ain't bad.
Yeah, it's early days, isn't it? Last season, it seems as though the Mariners seem to start off slow, and then as they progress throughout the season, they start to find the team chemistry, and then it all starts to click into gear. And Mark Jackson has his teams firing, and perhaps we are putting a bit too much stock in the Champions League because of the high level of competition. We're expecting a bit too much from them, perhaps, but at the same time, this is a treble-winning side from last season. I know they've lost some faces, but at the same time, they've still got the same manager. They've still got, the same philosophy of playing. They've got the attacking intent. It just, these first few games of the season, in both competitions, it just hasn't quite, come into play yet. It hasn't quite clicked. So, that could all mold together, perhaps, later on during the season. We'll wait and see. But I think the travel aspect will still play a bit of a part. And you saw it in this game against Adelaide. Adelaide were really good in that first half, I thought. Mariners really struggled with the pace and the intensity, but as the second half kicked off, I thought they settled into the game a bit better. And that's just the ebbs and flows, I think, of what you're going to see with the Mariners this season. I don't see them being as consistent as they were last season. That could change down the line, but for now, I think you're going to have to take the ups and downs with this team.
Finally out in Tarnia for the first time this season, which was great to see, by the way. I know we often talk about crowd numbers, and I think it was 4.2 thousand. In the end, doesn't sound a whole lot, but in terms of facilities and being fit for purpose, It looked great out there. You know, the stands, at least on the TV side, were full, and you could see the kind of vibe. You had like the roller coaster, the swinging thing going around behind the stands. It was a bit of a carnival atmosphere. It felt like a regional game of football, right?
No zoo? No zoo?
I'm sure the petting zoo was somewhere. I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
But, you know, they had plenty of that stuff going on. And we got to see Juan Matz's first start, Jacob, for the Western Sydney Wanderers Football Club. Obviously didn't quite have the fitness. Only played 60 or so minutes, maybe a touch more in this game, but a 1-1 draw at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it wasn't the worst case scenario that you put forward where he saw the crowd and noped out of there and left. No, it was 60 minutes. I don't think that he clearly doesn't still have that match sharpness in him. Because he didn't have too much of an impact in the game, it must be said. But to get 60 minutes out of him, you know what, you're going to take that if you're the Wanderers. Work him up into the back end of the season, and it was, I think, perhaps a little bit less chaotic than some of us were expecting this game to be. Right, with two sort of really unknown defenses. It was a 1-1 draw. Like, what's going on there? How's that happened?
The Western United goal, though, you have to say, like, off the back of, you know, that Jack Clisby clearance that kind of just plops at the top of the box and Ibusuki finishes off. That's a little bit of chaos for you.
Yeah, and it's a great finish as well. Like, to be able to hit that on the volley on the turn, like, it shows, you know, Ibusuki's class, which he was showing for Adelaide last season, and is why Western United picked him up, because they needed somebody who, you know, they didn't have that player last year that was going to be able to put those chances in the back of the net, and now they have him, and obviously that gets them the point here rather than taking a loss. It was good to see Nicholas Milanovic back involved in the game a little bit, got the assist for the Borello goal with a really nice ball in behind. Borello obviously looks like he's back. Getting a goal is going to do huge numbers for his confidence, because he was not really anywhere to be seen in the derby, and I think was dealt with quite handily by Hayden Matthews and Alexander Popovic. But in this game, he had a little bit more freedom on the ball, and he did show again his class and why, you know, the Wanderers have backed him through this injury and gone, no, we're going to give you a chance once you're back to get back into the starting 11. And that's why, because, you know, it was a fantastic finish and a really good goal from him. So, no, it was two sides where, again, you know, there's just, the Wanderers just don't look as good as I think people were expecting them to be. Again, the defense is the big issue there for them, and, you know, obviously losing Marcelo is a little bit of a problem with that. But you've got to remember that he wasn't fantastic last season either. They brought in Jung Tai-wook, who hasn't looked great, and even here against Western United, there are a couple of times where he got sat down by Matt Grimaldi, making some moves inside, and just didn't look too confident. So whether that's just an acclimatization thing and he's still getting used to it here, perhaps, but it's not the performances that we would have expected from him. And when, you know, obviously we heard that he was signing on, that seems like a decent signing. But he's showing on the pitch at the moment that it's not quite clicking for him, which is a bit of a disappointment. But I think this is sort of the opposite to the Jets and the MacArthur game, where I think this might hurt the Wanderers a little bit, because they would have been looking at this game as a chance to, you know, sort of put the derby behind them and go on and score a few goals and get a win and really sort of push on from there. And they couldn't quite do that. And they didn't have that edge in the game against a Western United side that some are thinking are going to finish bottom of the league. So, you know, I think that this might actually hurt the Wanderers a little bit. I know that Stajic is a fantastic coach, and, you know, he doesn't let those sort of things affect him, but as good a coach as you can be, you can't always stop things from affecting players mentally, because everybody, you know, is going to deal with it in their own way. And I just get the feeling that perhaps this is one of those games for the Wanderers where they're going to be less, oh, well, we played well, we just didn't get the result, and more frustrated at themselves for not creating those chances to get that result. You know, obviously, it would be nice to be proven wrong and to see them come out next week and play really, really well and put it behind them. But this was a chance to put the derby behind them, and they didn't quite do it. So, you know, there's nothing to suggest they're going to go on and do it next week.
Christian, are you on that as well? You know, as much as we've always had the question marks about their defence, would you have liked to see their front four clicking a little bit more by now?
Yes and no. I mean, again, it's early in the season, but, you know, from a Wanderers perspective, you can see the ideas, right? It's clear. Like, they maintain possession well. When they progress the ball forward, you can see the ideas and what Stad's just trying to do. It's just when they get there, they're just not creating enough clear-cut chances for me. And it's a bit all over the place where they don't know whether to cross the ball in. They're playing too many passes in around the area. They're taking shots from way outside the box and trying to test the keeper. Like, they're just making it so hard for themselves. And I think, once they sort that out, and once that just gets a chance to, I guess, get Mata more involved, once he gets the full fitness, hopefully, once the whole team gets to gel together, I think you will see a better, attacking flow. But for now, it's just, a bit all over the place at the moment. And I do see the defensive worries that Jacob touched on. The first 2 games, it hasn't looked all that promising. Even the Clisby clearance, I mean, that's one where you just flick the ball back behind you to the corner flag, just get it out of danger. Puts it right where the penalty spot is, and Ibuzuki is going to eat that up. So, a few defensive issues there, but I really do feel, as the season progresses, Stajic, it does have, the experience and the nous to really, galvanize his side and really, take them forward. But for now, I think there will be a couple of growing pains that fans will have to accept. It's funny that I did have him top of the league, so I do have to hype them up a bit, don't I? I can't just say
another
that
classic Christian prediction there.
I can't say they're not going to make finals. I still do think they will. I think they do have the quality to get in for sure. But for now, like I said, it's just going to take a bit of time for them to adjust and get their ideas across.
All right, very nice. There you go. There's your A-League round in review. There's plenty else happening in the world of Australian football at the moment. We're going to take you through some more of that on Friday, because that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Jacob Stevens, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Christian.
Thank you, Lockie.
We'll be back on Friday. We appreciate your company as always. We'll see you then. Goodbye.